What's good, y'all? Coming at y'all with another powerful presentation. My name is Open Book. This is my partner.
Hey guys, this is Haritha. Welcome back to TruSpace.
And we wanted to break down and demystify how the claims that Jesus is representing as representative of the Son. And this is very true, not only Christianity, but all your religions are talking about astrology in one way or another because there is nothing else to talk about. There is nothing else that governs our lives in such a totality that connects us with everything in existence, like the forces that we are up under, including like the celestial bodies that are in the sky, and they really do dictate our psychology. So when we're looking at the basis of these religions, what are they talking about? They're talking about human psychology. They're talking about life, essence. Within itself, which is the very domain that astrology takes hold in. And then once you start looking at and deconstructing these religions, especially Christianity and the stories of prophets like Jesus, you find all the correlations to the phases of the seasons, fall, spring, summer, and all of that, and how they connect with everything. Even in the Bible, the symbolism of what is used is connecting to the zodiacs themselves. So we can get into that on how Jesus is the Son. But for you to really understand that concept, you have to understand that the Bible is allegorical. So, would you be able to go in on how the Bible is an allegory?
Uh, well, was first of all the way the Bible is written and the stories they're trying to describe. They're trying to encapsulate like abstract concepts that we could all experience. But they were trying to write a story where they could explain these abstract concepts. They're almost like power of nature is playing out, like astrology, like CG was saying. So they were attempting to describe these things the best way possible, and the best way to do it is to make them into characters, representation that look like us humans. Because for us to understand what the sun, which was supposed, what Jesus is, we're supposed to maybe put it in like man form, and from if we describe it from our human form, it makes it easier to understand what is the sun doing in a macro way, because we're trying to because the Bible is just a micro story of the macro things, essentially, basically.
100%. Breaking things down. All, what is it, like 66 different books within the Bible? All of them is a different rendition of the sun going through the 12 zodiacs. Every single one of them. Every single one of
Mm-hmm.
them is a different rendition of the sun's travel through the zodiacs and celestial events going down. And if you think about it, if you're trying to teach people on how to handle, say there's energy that changes and fluctuates, and based off of those changes and fluctuations, how you act within your environment, within other people, is dynamic and changeable, and there's ways you can move with it and ways you can move against it. Wouldn't putting it in a story form, just like what Harith was saying, help us start to understand on how we could, because then we can start to imagine ourselves within these characters because they are designed to be that way, and we can see ourselves acting out these transits, and we can start weighing the scales ourselves and seeing if this is energy that we want to deal with, or if this, so we already have an example of how that axis of those energies, how it can be balanced through those stories. So that's the point of it too. And we forget that there's different types of knowledge, and there has to be a connection with the information that you're receiving and some type of internal emotion for you to really internalize the information. Like if you look at within your own life and the things and information that you remember the most, it's things that you're passionate about. It's information that made you happy. It's information that made you sad. It's information that induced a strong emotional event from you. And the best way to do that is a relatable story in order to invoke emotion within you. This is what Hollywood is doing. This is what everybody is doing. Where if you can, this is what they do in commercials. If they do a commercial that gets you into emotion, like in that Joe Dispenza book, that example when he's talking about the shingles commercial, and it shows you terrible shingles on an old person's body that makes you go like, oh, that's grotesque. Oh, I wouldn't want that. And then hits you with a statistic. It's like 1 in 3 people catch shingles in their old age. That information burns into your psyche, and that's what you take home most. So if they were to suggest a medicine for you, a proactive medicine, something you're taking to prevent it from happening, that's what you remember. And then in the small little tidbits in that commercial, it says that, you know it basically says you shouldn't take the pill if you have all of these problems, which are most of the things that the regular person has, and directly contradicts who they were trying to advertise the medicine to. But you don't remember any of that. All of that goes sweeps under because it wasn't attached to the emotion like that. So that's why stories are so powerful, because you have that emotional investment within it due to the relatability. And when you pair that with certain ideas, thoughts, and information, it can really penetrate a person's psyche.
Mm-hmm, 100%. One of the reasons that a lot of people are not able to understand why Jesus representation of the sun is because of the language. And right now we're speaking a language and utilizing a language that lacks symbolism. Because when you look at hieroglyphs, it makes it way easy to communicate such a message. Because, like, for example, let me show you right here. You could see almost like a picture, like of hold on, right here. But if it's clear, they're trying to describe a Dortian to Osiris, which an Osiris is a star, and it makes it so easy to understand because they're showing actually the symbolism of men in the position of prayer, looking at a star. So, like, when you look at it in that level of language, it's easier to interpretate. But in the modern day, we lost such right brain language.
100%. And it's right brain language. Like, this is what I'm talking about. And then when you go and smoke weed, which I'm about to spark up one now, but when you smoke weed, when you take shrooms, when you do any of these type of things that activate different regions in your brain that you don't within, or you meditate, and tap into those extra sensory experiences and stuff like that, you start to think in images. You don't think linearly, and you start to think more abstract. So where
Mm.
is that? What aspect of that is us? Is that something that is suppressed within us? Do we have a society or environment that fosters thinking in images? Think about a child, how we come into this world. You didn't come into
Mhm.
this world speaking English, bruv. That was something that was taught into you. Obviously, the capacity to think linearly and to think with the structure of English is a capacity within us, but obviously, it's not all that's there, because that's not how we come into this world. A baby speaks purely in images, purely in images.
Mhm.
That's how they think and process.
And that's how even your body speaks. If you're into exercise science, they'll tell you for you to be able to program your body, you gotta like visualize images. And a lot of people will recommend to visualize like your whole, like if you're a basketball player, like visualize your movement and like go through the movement in your brain before you go through it physically, and that is able to create some form of neural adaptation within your body without you even moving. So that's how powerful like right brain language tools and exercises are actually.
And how they can create real changes within our body. Like what
Hmm.
Harry just described, there is a legitimate study by Harvard professors where they did an experiment where they had different groups. They had control groups. One was a arm flexing experiment where they had one group flex their arm vigorously, like did an exercise where they're flexing their arm and stuff like that within intervals and stuff like that, like an exercise. They had a group of people that just visualized them flexing their arms at maximum. And then they had a group that
Mm-hmm.
did nothing. The group that
Mm-hmm.
just visualized had a 10% increase in muscle development within their arm, which was, I think the people who did it had similar around 10 to 13 percent increase. The people who actually did it, so the body couldn't tell the difference between the actual emotion and the visualization of that emotion. Now, imagine if you weren't in a society that forced you to think so conceptually, so left brain, and you got to explore that. Is that something that would be a more intricate part of your reality if you realize that you can visualize and affect real biological changes within your body, which goes to show that that is a natural function within us. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
could
Mm-hmm.
change things with your body
And it makes it more powerful if you include your body with it now. So it's no longer just like a mental exercise, but you're combining the mental with the physical, and that's you become like the word became flesh type of like energy in the Bible.
That's literally what it is. That's literally what it is. You're balancing your masculine and your feminine energies to come together to create a child, to coming together for creation.
Mm-hmm.
But this is
And that's
why.
that's the one of the major, and
Mhm.
that's one of the major ideas in the Bible, like marriage through sex and things like that. We're describing, oh, we're gonna marry this son of this family, gonna marry to this tribe or whatever. King Solomon had 700 wives, and all these different allegories. They're describing different masculine and feminine uh, energies within the body, which you could even talk about in a biological function too. You could describe the heart as masculine, and then the lymphatic system as feminine because it represents the moon, Cancer, the fourth house, and then it becomes a whole story about how the body married itself into existence type of story. This is why Mary had a child without like having real sex essentially, which they were trying to say. But like this is the craziest part about it, because that's how you develop the concept of faith. You're supposed to have faith that that's what happened. But even though you know it's not true, but the story itself is supposed to teach you the concept of faith, basically, if you get what I mean. But people miss that point.
100%. That's just like, it's openness. And then you can look at Sagittarius too, because Sagittarius and being ruled by Jupiter is talking about faith, but the other qualities of Sagittarius is also that genuine openness. Now, once you have that qualities and capabilities, you're not closing off your reality that you perceive, if you get what I mean, where if somebody can tell you that information, and because you have the faith or a broader perspective, you don't just automatically dismiss what they would say, but you try and find the meaning within it, you try and find the purpose within it. And then once you're open, you might not find that right away. Sagittarius is vast. Maybe you need other concepts and other people to come in, and then you have a holistic type of understanding, and that is the real faith, combined when you understand what energies that is going by. And then you people want to understand the full spectrum of, say, a concept of faith or that reality within us. But imagine with me just explaining it to you. But imagine if I told you a story about a nigga named Moses, and he had to walk into the water to prove the God that he believed in him, until the ocean would split, and then the ocean split it, and so now you understand different levels of that energy, and where it can go and where it can't go, wrapped in through stories. And this is how you elicit specific emotions. Y'all don't think marketers know this shit in terms of using color theory in order to
McDonald's,
trigger
think
certain
about it.
reactions within your mind?
Think about like McDonald's. They utilize red, which is your passions, your desires. It deals with your blood, your neurons too, from that concept. And then yellow, your blood, happiness, exaltation, and they give you a happy meal. And oh,
And
kids
then
love McDonald's.
that's what I was about to say. And then those are kids' energies. Like if you look at clairvoyance, they talk about seeing children emitting a lot of red, yellow, orange type of colors, like the lower chakras, because those are the ones that they're developing and focusing. And it's not necessarily always bad. Like when a child is emitting red, it's not necessarily that they're angry. Sometimes that's the physical energy they're playing, but it's a vital energy, and maybe it is kind of anger, but they're not really angry, especially when you're a kid at that point. But look at how those colors through the eyes of clairvoyance are dominant within children, and then those are the people that McDonald's, who is using those same colors, who they target the most. So there's truth into that. Why Facebook is blue, correlating with
The
your
mind,
your
Mercury, I
mind
think
and
too.
communication
Yeah.
and
Peace too,
and
22. Yeah.
exactly. And then look at birds. Birds, and why we venerated them in the old. Like, birds are integral for our construction of language within itself. Birds tweet in consonants. We learn communication through these birds, through birds, and through different things. But that's where
That
consonants come from.
and that is 100% true. Like if you look at like the Egyptian language and the hieroglyphs, one of the ways they would write all the vowels, and they write in different form of birds essentially here, which is it blew my mind in terms of they trying to describe it as a bird because the vowel like travels too, just like the bird. So they trying to use the bird to describe a metaphysical concept of like how the vowels basically moves.
And that's how it needs to be done. If you're ever wondering why us being modern can't connect with these religions, why we can't connect with, say, a higher sense of being, it's because we think so linearly. It's because, like, how the fuck am I supposed to understand a force if I just limit what I think I am to, some nigga that was born in Canada, born in Toronto, type of thing, that went to this school, that, how many white people have I met within my life for me to come to some type of conclusion on how white people are in totality? Or how many black people have I met? How many Hispanics? How many of anybody? How many gay people? How many, whatever, have I, it's very, limited once you are so adamant on clinging on to the ego, when you're so adamant on clinging on to, you know a specific narrowed um perspective that is you. You have to kind of transcend individuality. You have to kind of transcend, and that's not necessarily something that is all spooky or woo woo. Just even you stepping outside and trying to empathize with someone else is doing that. And then now you're kind of broadening your experience, where kind of stop being within yourself and kind of can see yourself within everything within the world, and things that don't exist in the world. If that forever expansive type of energy. But um yeah, thinking and seeing in images is very intuitive, and it triggers to your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind understands images. Like, one perfect example of that is and symbols and metaphors, references. This is how your intuition picks up on things. This is how your right side of your brain starts to communicate. So if you want to tap into the creative abstract thinking ways, it's through certain avenues. So this
Mm-hmm.
is why art is so abstract. This is why music is so abstract. This is why rappers rap with metaphors, and why it hits you like that. And then what do they rap in metaphors, right? And then what do you get in your mind when they rapping in metaphors? What do you get in your mind when Nas is
Images.
rapping? You get
Yeah,
images.
images. You feel like you're in New York Street. That's it.
But if I tell you, this neuron connect to this chemical composition, and then it broke off and metabolized into these, what just came into your mind? Not a damn thing. Maybe some visuals of other documentaries of neurons, and you're imagining what a neuron would be like. But is that even how a neuron really looks like, or is that just a model?
It's
That's what, if you get what I mean.
it's almost like someone describing to you. It's almost like someone giving you a commentary, but someone putting in a story and rapping about it is putting you in that experience. It's too different. Like seeing it and then listen, like almost like so hearing someone like second representation of it. Like almost like the metaphor gets you closer to the truth in a way.
100%. 100%. And it's based off of experience. If you can build the experience for someone, um you can help them make the logical connections that you have want them to make. Like say with children, like you can't tell a nigga not to touch that shit because it's hot, you know? Like he doesn't know, but if you could somehow give him the experience, and this is what parents naturally do, don't they? He doesn't understand the concept of hot, but if a parent's gonna be like, "Oh no, don't touch," you know, you're making the emotion or the action of being in pain, and they're like, "Oh shit, that's what's gonna happen when I touch it. Oh, I know what that is. Oh, so that's gonna hurt. I don't understand the concept of hot and why I shouldn't touch this." But I understand that feeling of pain. I've felt pain before, so then they start to make those connections. So we understand things symbolically, and this is how you really tap into your subconscious mind, because your subconscious mind is doesn't think linearly like that and isn't processing information on such a narrow bandwidth. It's processing everything in totality all the time. So with that type of awareness, you can't zoom in on things. If I were to try and tap into the entirety of my mind, I'd have to stop talking. No, because I'm following a single train of thought. It has nothing to do with my childhood, what I'm talking about right now, or what I'm going to eat for dinner, or any of that that shit. If you get what I mean, I'd have to stop talking and
Mm,
kind of enter a more of an open focus, or for that to be the what I'm expressing. If you get what I mean.
mm,
So
mm. Because it's almost like you can't focus on what is up there because you're using your body to deliver almost like an idea, if you get what I mean.
exactly,
It's
exactly.
almost like you already picking up something and you're speaking, but there's more up there. But then you can't do that because you're already like kind of describing something
One,
or speaking about something.
but look at how I can take symbols or metaphors, you know. Maybe if I described it as a vast ocean or something like that versus a river stream, or now you have visceral reference to what it is that I'm talking about. This is why Brahman was referenced as a shimmering pool of water that encapsulates everything. How else are you supposed to describe some all-encompassing energy to a human? You're gonna say air, so you're gonna call spirit and connect it to breath, even though it's not it. What else can I explain to this nigga what totality is, or water being
Mm,
immersed within water? Like, how else are you supposed to explain it
and that's
for a
the like
person to
also
truly
part
understand?
also that comes down to also the language part of it because language start to separate all these concepts like rappers. The way rappers rapping is almost like some form is Semitic language essentially because they're using bigger words to describe smaller things. This is why a metaphor encapsulates multiple things. You like ever if you ever hear Lupe Fiasco rap, he would say it like four things in like maybe one sentence. That's what I mean by encapsulating multiple concepts and like in something, and that's
Double
what Semitic language
entendres,
double entendre is essentially, yeah.
triple entendres, like Hove is
Quadruple and like
master. Yeah, they're masters at that stuff.
100%, 100%. Mm-hmm.
And it triggers the right side of your brain. It triggers and penetrates
Mm-hmm.
into your subconscious mind. So this is
Mm-hmm.
why it would have been done in allegories, why these stories and spiritual concepts. And we're talking about spiritual reality, spiritual energy. We're talking about the non-physical aspects that dominate our lives. So how do you bring that to someone who's here and now in a physical body? Through these allegories was the most efficient way, and that's not us making it up. That And it's not just the Bible, Christians or Jews or Abrahamic religions that came up with that concept. It's everybody that came with that concept. Maybe certain niggas didn't necessarily write it down, or niggas wrote it down in different ways,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what everybody did. Everybody had their mythology as their unifying piece for their civilization. You needed a cosmology, an origin story to sustain a civilization through my observation of all past civilizations. That's what they had, which is interesting.
It becomes interesting when they start like compete against each other in terms of, let's see who has the better civilization, which represents like the mind they came up with and the intellectual property. And that's what you see essentially with people debating each other, like Muslims and Christian be like, oh, in my religion we wash ourselves 5 times a day, and that led us to maybe survive certain black plagues and whatever. And in the Christians, in my religion, we have the Trinity, and the concept of the Trinity fits in different dimensions of reality, and we're more broader. And like it's just people competing and showing off their spaceship, this mind, this spaceship, this metaphor to live their life with, essentially.
100%. Look at these Jews right now. They're justifying taking a land that was occupied by other people and bombing and killing their children based off of, they have a strong backstory. But like, no, this is the promised land that God gave us after we escaped slavery and we were wandering for 3,000 years. And now we're coming back to the promised land. That's a powerful fucking cosmology that's spanning vast amounts of time. These niggas is talking about thousands. These niggas is really trying to connect themselves to thousands of years of past histories and stuff like that. That's strong. Look at the influence that they have within the world. Not saying that it's right or wrong, but just look at the power that the strong cosmology that a group of people can unify under. All Jews can unify under these types of concepts. So that's where the power comes, but it's still separate from everything because it's referring, it's a separate cosmology for a certain civilization. But these things are being utilized all around. Imagine the power if we devised one for Earth, for all humans. That and that's easy. Like we know those ones, and that's what's been attempted, through a lot of these religions. But that's what we need for sure. And then especially within a story, and then that's why every civilization developed their own. So you have to understand the power of these symbols and why they would have told it within an allegory. But then we can start to get into how and why it changed into being a more, to be taken as more of a literal representation. And I'd make the claim that that all started with or at least in our modern day perspective, that started with Rome. That started when they started to change everything in terms of, on multiple levels. We used to follow the start of the year on, even on old Bibles and shit like that. It started in March. March was the beginning of the year. And then because it's springtime, because it's Aries time, that's the system that used to be followed pre Roman changes to the calendar, the Gregorian calendar, and whatever else that other calendar was called. I forgot what it was, but
The
they
Gregorian
added to
calendar,
Gregorian calendar, and there was another one.
Julian or Julius.
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, they
Mm.
added, so July, Julius, August, Augustine. They were named after these people, and then what is it? January was named after Janus, which is some two-faced, literally like two faces, fertility god. And then so they added months to the year that we are following. So if you look at the series of events, or the series of the year, if we start at March, when we get to, so March, first month, April, May, June, July, August, September. Sept,
Mm.
just like in French and in Latin,
There's,
sept, it means seven. It represents seven.
there's even a
October,
there's Septimium. I think it was a Roman general too.
probably, yeah. October, we all know oct is eight.
Mm.
November, and these are Latin references too. Nov is
Mm.
nine. Dec. Dec, just
mm,
like decimals or paces by 10. Dix
mm,
is 10 in French, because it's
mm.
Latinized. So deca. So Rome is when all of these things start to get changed. So look at us having been on a natural cycle. Our year starts with the cosmological year because we developed systems that were in tune with nature because it functioned better for us. But then when this empire that is known for its crookedness, that is known for perverting purity, it takes over. That's when
Yeah,
we
Hellenism.
they put Hellenism. That's when they put us on a different biological clock. And what does that do? You could see the effects of that empire, our empire now, because we're still following it. Aren't we discombobulated? Aren't we not in tune with nature? You know, it's these reasons why, for sure. But Rome changed everything, and then Rome was is even like it's just Jews to be to be honest with you. It was Greeks before. There's no such thing as Greeks. Greeks aren't real people. Those were just the Hellenes. These are just Jews. These are just Jews. And then what the Greeks made the first Bible too, didn't they? The Septuagint. How does the Greeks make the first Bible? How does that make any sense if they're not Abrahamic? If they don't have Abrahamic origins. But if you were to go and look up who made the Septuagint, it was the Greeks. So semantics. And if you start dividing what you're calling people in history, then you can start hiding specific truths and things like that. But beyond all of that, the Council of Nicaea that had happened, and oh, this nigga went and pulled out the motherfucking Septuagint. That's jokes. Is the Septuagint? It's funny how it has sept. Is that just the 5 books?
Yeah, 5 books of Moses. Yeah.
Why do they have sept in there? But I guess it has a meaning within itself. But that's interesting. But because we were just even talking about the numbers reference. But yeah, Rome came the Council of Nicaea where they're taking out different things, and then even the introduction of Christianity when we're getting to the topic of Jesus. Um, this was introduced when did Christianity start? 100 years or a couple 100 years after Jesus died and had lived, and then it was starting to be brought up. So, what were people doing within that time span, allegedly, that Jesus had lived and had died? When you start seeing that, you start seeing the Essenes, the certain sects of Jews practicing a version of Christianity that is very different from the modern type of Christianity that we practice now. And then we see with the advent of Constantine, making it the national religion of Rome and legalizing it, because remember, Christianity was illegal at that time. This is when the modern day Christianity we start to know it. But what was that Christianity that was practiced for those 300 years? And that's something I want to show y'all.
It seems it's even. I think it's the same word of like how Muslims they call Jesus Isa. Isa is the same word as like Essene. Like
Isa.
it comes. It's the same root word. Yeah.
Oh shit! And then the Nazarenes. The
Yeah.
Nazarenes were the
Exact.
Essenes.
Mm. And Nazarene, Nas calls himself like his songs will describe himself as Jesus of no Nas of Nazareth. Nazareth
God's
has the
son.
same meaning as Nas name because Nas name his first name is Nasir. Nasir means like
Yeah,
victorious in Arabic, and Nazareth comes from the same root word. So when describing of Jesus of Nazareth, they're saying Jesus the victorious, something along these lines.
that's crazy. And then he most definitely played the Jesus archetype. That's funny. Well, except for dying. But 100%, this really changed everything. And like I was just telling you, when Constantine had came and introduced this version of Christianity, he had killed his mother and his wife, boiling one of them in oil as like torture, as punishment, because they wouldn't let go of the old teachings of the Essenes, of the old Christianity that they were practicing at that time. And then after this, after the church starting backed by Rome like that, this is when you start seeing these labels starting to come on people in terms of naming people pagan, and just this broad stroke term that's thrown
Mm,
on people that simply
Berbers,
weren't all of these
Berbers,
derogatory or separating
yeah,
type of
yeah.
words, just
Mm-hmm.
to, and where that accumulated a lot of different people, maybe with different beliefs or different versions of things, but simply weren't Christian. And this is where that
Mm.
those titles
And
had came from.
and like that undermined people, like when they describe Vikings as pagans and they don't believe in God or whatever. I bet you Vikings, they have a big ass cosmology about astrology and all that thing, all the same things basically, but they just call them pagans.
100%. And then everything was astrology based and solar based and stuff, wasn't it? And then
Mm,
we just start calling them pagan, we start calling them devil worshippers, we start calling them all of these different types of things because they
mm,
were trying to demonize that. But then when you look at Christianity, you see all of those pagan traditions at the very roots of
mm, they,
Christianity.
mm,
So
mm.
it creates that contradiction.
Human sacrifice too. That's something a lot of like other monotheistic religion say Christianity got from paganism because Jesus was sacrificed and things along this line.
So this is what we're trying to show you in terms of this overlap, because even in Christianity and even the religions that claim that they are separate from these people have similarities and similar traditions to these people, and it's all starting to fall under this astrological scope. This is where we're trying to tell you that there is nothing else to talk about. There is nothing else to talk about in terms of when you are dealing with an environment,
Mm, mm, mm,
the
mm,
conditions of that environment, lead the conversation, if you get what I mean. So if
mm,
our environment is being set by external forces, if we don't pay attention to them, then we're not going to know
mm.
what the conversation is being had, aka the language of astrology.
And these forces that set up the system, they play out the system themselves. And like Caesar was saying with the Council of Nicaea is one of the is there's seven councils that basically determine Christianity in totality. But think about seven stars, seven planets. So they had to come
Seven
with
sacraments.
basically, and just Nicaea was almost like the first one, the first attempt at like creating a whole church, basically.
These niggas one did some Full Metal Alchemist type shit. You
Basically,
know how?
that's it. That's it.
Yeah, well,
That's
like
it.
literally,
Boom.
these
That's
the
it. That's it.
chakras. What do you mean they did seven councils? These niggas done went up some serpent spine. They're like, let's have the meeting here. Let's have the meeting here. Let's have the meeting here. Like, get out of here with that shit, yo. Get out of here. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the power of ritual. That's the power of symbolism, because it starts to penetrate your subconscious mind. So they understood that. So niggas is brainwashing themselves. That's what you have to understand. That they be brainwashing themselves. But it's not. I'm saying brainwashing in terms to help y'all understand, but obviously that's not what's going on. Because if you can brainwash yourself, then it's not a negative term, or it's not, doesn't have the negative connotations that we had thought it means, but it just means tapping into your subconscious programming and start to rewiring how your brain and body starts to work for it to align with natural forces on the outside. And once you actually do these things, and you experience that calmness, that relaxation, those alpha brainwave states that we go in and we smoke or we drink or we eat food so that we can get a taste of those type of brainwave states, so we can have those relaxing type of symptoms, and we can release those, that neurochemistry and stuff like that. But this is how we are fundamentally. But yeah, Rome had changed everything. And why do you think that they would do it the way that they did? Keep the same traditions, but then, exotericize it, externalize it all, make us think that it's literal, and all of these different types of things. And
Because
Um, mhm.
one, because they obviously were training us to be more left brain, obviously. So they obviously can't tell the esoteric part of the story, which is the right brain. So they obviously had to use the left brain to make all of us like logical creatures.
100%. But then they couldn't deny the power to penetrate the subconscious mind that the symbolism, the real meaning, the metaphorical
Mm,
stuff
mm,
had. So they had
mm,
adopted it so that they could penetrate the subconscious mind, but then train it to be more left brain analytical because it suits the purpose for expansion, does it not? You have more
mm,
people thinking about material things and linear progression and less abstract thing. You're gonna have more forward movement, more things can get done within that frame of reference. So it's good within a certain degree or within a certain scope, especially say you're an empire that's trying to expand, but in terms of spiritual development or spiritual exploration and understanding, that's not the best way of going about it. But they understood it. They understood that.
And like they obviously want to share the knowledge with everybody, which is a part. But also, I believe to a certain extent, they realize they can't teach it to everybody because everybody may not be interested, if you will, depending on how much information and the level of it too, and things
within
along this line, basically.
within certain levels for sure. And then I'm gonna go deeper in on why they would want us out of it. Basically, like when you're in alpha brainwave states, when you're in delta, theta, those lower ones, like what we get when we're dreaming. But even alpha is when you're really relaxed, when you're really intuitive and creative, when you're in sync with your the alpha brainwave is the same as the Sherman resonance that earth is emitting. So literally, when you're in a state of being that is calm, relaxed, you're more creative, you're more susceptible, your brain waves are vibrating at the same rate that earth is vibrating at. So this is why when you see earth representing as nurturing, calming and stuff like that, that's literally its vibration, and it literally has that effect when you tune into it. But when you're in that state of being and you're able to release all of the you penetrate your parasympathetic mind, and you can tap into those automatic functions within your body. This is what we're talking about in terms of nirvana and bliss and stuff like that. And why, if you could be your own pharmacy, and happiness is a hormone, and sadness and all of these things are hormones, but and you can control your body, what do you need from the
Mm,
external world? And that's the scary part. And then you're more content. Imagine if you could be your own drug response. If through meditating you can get into a calm state, and you didn't have to go and buy a cigarette, or you didn't have to go and do these other things. How much control can a person have over you? So if they're trying to convert that, and then maybe they can't even stop you from getting into those states of being. But when we're in those states of being, we're very suggestible. So they just take advantage of that suggestibility and try and program it so that we can stay out of those states of beings. And when we do get into them, that we're pushed back into not being into them, if you get what I mean. Or we have to go through it externally. You see how we would have to go and do things externally to be into those states of beings instead of just producing it within ourselves. But that's my why of why they had changed everything to making it external, to disconnect those teachings from the reality that they existed within your body, and try to make you think of it externally. Now we're fighting and battling about a guy named Jesus, because these people don't believe that Jesus died for our sins, when this nigga was never a real nigga in the first place, and he was never supposed to be. And even if he was a real nigga, he told you, don't worry about me being a real nigga, just go and do these, that, and the third, and the kingdom of God is yours. But yeah, so we can get into the real meaning of Jesus now. The real meaning of the story of Jesus and how Jesus is the Son. And to commence that, I'd like to pull up an image. Let me pull up. Uh, yeah, you can see it, no?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we all know what this is, the Last Supper. I found another picture. I wonder if I got rid of it. Maybe I did. I found another picture that it looked like it was an actual picture of the thing on the wall, the painting of the wall, and everybody looked white except for Judas. Except for Judas, he looked black as hell, and I didn't know if that was the deterioration of the material, or something was some shade is being thrown. But anyways, look at the groupings that is being happening within this, and we'll go deeper on to what um the disciples mean in conjunction with Jesus, which should be obvious because him having 12 disciples and him being the son. Even look at the picture of him having the fucking sun behind him, or the light behind him, because he is representative of the sun, and the sun externally exists, but it exists within you internally as well, and he was the representation of it existing internally. That's why they depicted him as you, as a human, and then connected him and made his likeness of the external, the bigger thing that we can all point at and say has those traits and qualities. And then look at, this is springtime. They're looking forward, forward looking, because that's the energy of spring, moving forward.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense why Jesus in the middle, because that's almost like the middle point to a certain extent if you think about it.
Exactly. Exactly. Summer, it's like they're being hit with emotions, kind of like the first time. This is the fall time where we're reacting to those emotions that we had been hit with. And then now we are processing them and starting to understand them, and process what had happened within the winter time. But how they're in the groups of threes, in the 12, all of this is indicating that it's astrology, or the 12 zodiacs, with Jesus being the sun, being in the middle. And then look at where they are. Look at the building of where they are and how it has the three doors and opening. Where have we seen that before? Where have we seen? Oh, this is the picture that I was talking about. Look at this nigga. Ain't that? Why is he this dark? Why is he this dark?
Oh,
Everybody else is white as hell. Everybody else is white as hell. Why is this man so dark? But anyways, um, right here, right here, right here, Chichen Itza. And I am not saying that Jesus pulled up to Chichen Itza to have dinner, a Mexican dinner with tacos and tortillas, um with a server named Maria. That's not what had happened. It's representative of the sun, Chichen Itza, and this is how universal these ideas are, because this is in Mexico, and then I'm about to show y'all motherfucking more shit from Mexico. But these are because the sun exists within all hemispheres, so this is why you're gonna find the correlation, because that's exactly what they were talking about. And not to mention that we were way more broader and interconnected within history than what we were told and perceived by these Romans, and these different types of ideas that was trying to put us in certain states of mind by making us forget about our history. But Chichen Itza is built it's called the Temple of the Sun. The sun, when it's going through the spring and fall equinoxes, hits it at an angle where it goes through, hits the temple, and creates a snake-like pattern down the slope of the stairs. It makes a snake-like pattern to go down. So now we're talking about the serpent coiling up the tree. We're talking about the serpent coiling up the spine, this kundalini energy that is being represented by that sun movement. And they built it intentionally with that design to venerate the sun and the solar cycles that are going on. So when we're talking, when you see this, and this is where it is. So when you're seeing this image and you're seeing that being depicted behind it, that's because it's the sun hitting that pyramid um the 12 zodiacs are depicted around it because its movement through the 12 zodiacs is when it's going to hit it. um and then it's the vernal equinox. That's probably even why he's in the middle, marking like the new half, or dividing the winter from the springtime, the cold time from the warm times. um but yeah, that's how he's mentioned there. And then let me also pull up. These are the 12 cranial nerves that sit around and circulate the pineal gland. And I'll get deeper into the pineal gland and its connection with Jesus. But there's 12 cranial nerves that surround it, just to go and show you that they're talking about, and this is as above so below. These things are exist within our body. We are designed by the celestial movements, and it's that intelligence that had designed our body's intelligence and is still connected to it right now as we speak. But all of these cranial nerves surround the pineal gland, which can also represent Jesus. um um and his 12 disciples. And then the pineal gland is a receptor that picks up on light, which comes from the sun. But then we'll go deeper on that after. But just to go and show you that the story of Jesus was an allegory of reaching spiritual ascension. And this is why I showed you the temple of Chichen Itza, the Temple of the Sun, because they had the same story with what's my name? What's um Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl. This is Quetzalcoatl from Mexico, holding a cross, holding a cross. But you see the cross reference in ancient Mexico all the fucking time. There's one book that was talking about Atlantis, and then talking about the civilizations that were around that area and how they had the remnants of those traditions. But in it, he was talking about the Amaru, which is the cross, which is what they would put in it, related to a cross and a serpent, because Quetzalcoatl is a deity, is like a man that turns into the feathered serpent, the plumed serpent. So it is a person that transforms into a higher form once it reaches a spiritual enlightenment. And it came with a message to the people of building civilization, taught them how to build civilization, how to live and take care of themselves, and how to organize their minds, and how to, and brought agriculture and stuff like that. But this is the sun. These are the lessons that the sun has, because niggas was watching the sun travel around, and it taught them agriculture, that if you plant this at this time, that this is gonna grow by this time and shit like that. But this is what they were referring to. So them having the echoing of the same symbols over here in Mexico that they were having all the way over there allegedly in Rome and Europe like that, then maybe we're talking about universal symbolisms and not an actual person that had lived within that time and period that they had said that they had, because they're having the exact same experience, or the stories are lining up the exact same. But yeah, even I don't even have the snapshots of it. I'll probably even just edit it in after. But the story of Mary and Joseph, referring to the secretions of the land of milk and honey, the promised land that was promised within the Bible. See, this is what I'm talking about. If we're saying that this is allegorical, and that we're talking about metaphors, how are these niggas claiming that they can steal Palestine from these niggas when the promised land was a fucking state of mind?
If Christians, the Essenes, fully realized and taught the great truth that Christ was a substance, an oil, or an ointment, contained especially in the spinal cord, consequently in all parts of the body, as every nerve in the body is directly or indirectly connected with the wonderful river that flows out of Eden, the upper brain, to water the garden. The early Christians knew that scriptures, whether written in Hebrew or Greek, were allegories, parables, or fables based on the human body, fearfully and wonderfully made. You have to understand the etymology of these words, what they mean. So, Christos in Greek is oil, sacred oil. These adepts knew that the secretion, the gray matter, the gray creative, which issues or secretes from the cerebrum, was the source and cause of the physical expression called man. And they knew that the river of Jordan was symbolized in the spinal cord, and that the Dead Sea was used to symbolize the sacred plexus at the base of the spinal column, where the Jordan, the spinal cord, ends, typifying the entrance of Jordan into the Dead Sea. The thick, oily, and salty substance composed the sacral plexus, the quota equina, which means the horse's tail in Latin, which is basically that's our tail, all the nerves that run through our sex organs from our sacrum, from our lower spine. It looks like fine hairs of a horse's tail, so they called it the quota equina. The horse's tail may be likened to a crude petroleum, petra, mineral or salt, and oleum, Latin for oil. And the thinner substance, oil or ointment in the spinal cord, may be compared with coal oil. And when this oil is carried up to the crosses of the Ida and Pingala, the two fluid nerves that end in a cross in the medulla oblongata, where it contacts the cerebellum, Golgotha, the place of the skull. This fluid is refined as coal oil is refined to produce gasoline, a higher rate of motion that causes the ascension of the airship. Okay, so what very few people know is that the Bible itself, the bibliography, is two things. It's a genealogy, a family lineage. So-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so, and so on. But the book itself and all the characters in it actually refer to the temple of God, which is the human body itself. I know people find this hard to believe, but there are all these clues. Like, for example, Golgotha is actually your skull, every human being's skull, because that's this place where the crucifixion takes place. It's all inside of us. When the oil or ointment is crucified, crucify means to increase in power 1,000-fold, not to kill. It remains 2 days and a half, the moon's period in the sign of the tomb. Cerebellum on the third day ascends to the pineal gland that connects to the cerebellum. With the optic thalamus, the central eye in the throne of God, is the chamber overtopped by hollow or hallowed, caused by the curve of the cerebrum, the most high of the body, which is the temple of the living God, the living, vital substance, which is precipitation of the breath of life, breathed into man, therefore the holy or whole ghost of breath. So what's being explained here, it's a little cryptic, the language, but what's being explained here is the sacred secret or secretion. That's what that word means, secret, secretion, that comes from the pituitary and the pineal gland. That chemistry comes out of the brain, goes down the spinal column all the way to the sex organs in order to make new life. It's charged with electric soul power. But that force also, if not used to make life and not expelled or wasted, it changes its chemistry once it mixes together. That's the chemical wedding that the alchemists talk about. Once that new substance happens, it becomes less dense and it floats back up the spinal column in the cerebral spinal fluid like Mercury does in a thermometer. And it rests in the nave, in the gland known as the solar plexus. And it charges itself there based on the way you live. And the way you treat your body, the way you eat and drink and sleep and exercise. And it rests there for 2.5 days. Now that 2.5 days is significant because it's the time each month that the moon is in the sign in which you were born under, your sun sign. So whatever month you're born under, that's the month, that's your sun sign. And the moon goes every 28 days, or sometimes 29, just like the female cycle. It goes through each stage in the sky of the sun sign. So every month, every person has 2.5 days where the moon is in their sun sign. And that particular moment, that type of light is a cycle that started at your birth. And your body knows when that is. You might not know, but your subconscious body knows. And it takes an electrical charge from a combination of the sun and the moon's electromagnetic energy and charges this up while it's in your solar plexus. That's why it's called your solar plexus. Ever wonder that? Interesting how every doctor around the world, no matter what culture you come from, points to this weird spot where your rib cage comes together in the center of your body, and they say, oh yeah, that's the solar plexus. But no one ever asks why it's called that. That's why it's called the solar plexus. It's a very specific glandular spot. Anyway, George Carey will go on and point this out. The pineal gland is the pinnacle of the temple, the modus operandi in which the oil of the spinal cord reaches the pineal gland, and is described in what follows. There is no name under heaven whereby ye may be saved except Jesus Christ did, or christened, and then crucified. The correct rendering of the text in Greek. Every 29.5 days, when the moon is in the sign of the zodiac that the sun was in at the birth of the native, there is a seed, a psychophysical germ, born in the or out of the solar plexus, also known as the manger. And this seed is taken up by the nerves or branches of the pneumogastric nerve and becomes the fruit of the tree of life, or the tree of good and evil. Good, if saved and cast upon the waters, circulation to reach the pineal gland, and it's known as evil if eaten or consumed in sexual expression on the physical plane, or by alcoholic drinks or gluttony that causes fermentation or acid and even alcohol in the intestinal tract. Thus, in quotes, no drunkard can inherit the kingdom of heaven, for acids and alcohol cut or chemically split the oil that unites with the mineral salts in the body and thus produces the monthly seed. So that's what he's saying, is that this oil is, it's special because it's electrically charged. And it also is special because it has the ability to make new life, and your body created it. But it's also very fragile based on the way you treat your body. So the idea is to take care of it and to know that it's traveling up and down your spine and transmutate your sex energy accordingly. Now, he's not talking about celibacy. He's talking about knowing the body and using that energy at the right time for the right things going on. The seed, having the odor of fish, was called Jesus, or iktos, which is Greek for fish, and nun, N-U-N, Hebrew for of life. I am the bread that came down from heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. So many of us have seen the fish being associated with Jesus. Iktos means fish in Greek. The fruit of the tree of life, therefore, is the fish, bread, of which thou shalt not eat on the plain or animal of Adam, earth dust of the earth plane. Adam, the word Adam often in Hebrew text means red earth or earth dust. But to him that overcometh will I give to eat the fruit of the tree of life, because he saved it, and it returned to him in the cerebellum and the home of the spiritual man, the ego. The cerebellum is the heart-shaped, and it is called the heart in Greek, thus, in quotes, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So, another little thing, another side, the tree of life is not a physical place. It's never been a physical place. That was the invention of Rome, to pull people away from the real place of salvation, which is your own body, the human form. And the tree of life is your cerebrospinal tree, your cerebrospinal system. Your brain is the root ball, and all your nerves branch out, going down your body like a tree. You know, we're like a walking inverted tree. That is the original tree of life. The body organ that men in their ignorance call heart is termed divider or pump in Greek and Hebrew. Our blood divider is not the button that we touch when we think, but it is the upper lobe of the cerebellum that vibrates thought. The lower lobe is the animal or mortal lobe that governs the animal world. The section of the body below the solar plexus, called Lower Egypt, natural body, kingdom of earth, Apollyon, the devil, lived spelled backwards, Satan. Saturn governs the bowels. During the first 300 years of the Christian era, all has been above written was understood by the real Christians, and about the end of time, the persecution of the Essenes by the priesthood came so marked that they met in secret and always made the sign of the fish. About the year 325, Constantine, the pagan Roman emperor, called the teachers of Christianity together at Nicaea, the Council of Nicaea. Constantine murdered his mother and boiled his wife in oil because they still held the original doctrines of the Essenes. Constantine was told by the priests of his time that there was no forgiveness for crimes such as his, except through a long series of incarnations. But the Antichrist sought to concoct a plan by which he hoped to cheat the cosmic law. And so it came to pass, after months of wrangling and fighting over the writings of the primitive Christians who clothed the wonders of the human body in oriental imaginary imagery, that the council sometimes, by a bare majority, voted and decided which of the manuscripts were, quote-unquote, the Word of God, and which were not. So we all know that the Council of Nicaea was where the Bible was canonized, edited. Huge parts of it were taken out, and other parts were written in, which is pretty obvious to see. There was supposedly 12 disciples, but there's only 4 accounts of them in the Bible, the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Well, where's the other 8? Well, they were all there, but they were conveniently edited out for all kinds of political reasons. The very important point in the minds of those ignorant priests, whether or not an angel had wings, was decided in favor of wings by three majority. The minority contended that as Jacob let down the ladder for the angels to descend and ascend upon, it was a prima facie evidence that the angels do not have wings. Okay, what he's talking about there in that paragraph is that Jacob's ladder was not a real event that some man named Jacob witnessed. Jacob's ladder was a story, an allegory that talked about the spine. The ladder that angels went up and down are the 33 vertebrae of the spine. And angels are angles of light. They're also called messengers in Hebrew. The point is that Jacob's ladder is not a story of a man named Jacob. When you read multiple spiritual traditions from all over the world from different sacred texts, you can't help but realize that they're always talking in metaphor or parable or allegory. So the Bible should be no different. And there's certain people that want to take it literally, but you're talking about something spiritual. And so the only way to get at something abstract is to put it in some sort of language, some sort of story, or some sort of way to reference the context of it. So Spiritual texts are almost always referring to some sort of metaphor. Just think for a moment upon the colossal ignorance of these priests who did not know that Jacob in Hebrew means heel catcher or circle, a ladder that referred to the influence of the signs of the zodiac upon the earth. And as one,
it was a state of mind that you enter when your pituitary gland and pineal gland is stimulated, and your pituitary gland produces a milky substance, oxytocin, and then pineal gland secretes a more golden, like, this is the land of milk and honey. This is the promised land. And then when these things are activated, we have transcendental experiences, which I'm about to go and show y'all niggas. But there's a video that I want to play. I think it's like 8 minutes. It's 8 minutes. But just as it steps on the towel, the reptile falls into the drain hole, and the man suddenly gets back up. This was a trap, and he pushes the crocodile into the pump system, dropping the cover into place before dragging the sofa on top. There's no way for it to escape, and now they're safe for the time being. Can you hear it?
A little bit.
To start a fire and boil the eggs on top of a makeshift oven. That night, the man shares one with his
no bigger than the size of a grain of rice. It's
Yeah.
right between the back of your throat and the back of your head. That's why the pineal is called the third eye. It should be called the first eye because that's where we really see it.
Jesus does call it the first eye.
Brainwave patterns, and the person is feeling an awakening.
That's when he realizes that if they can't climb out of the pool, their only option is to escape from the drainage system.
Pineal gland has been known to be called the third eye because once it's stimulated and activated to the next level, it gives us profound inner vision. Pineal gland is very sensitive to visible light. Light that's coming from the sun or light that's coming from lights that we have in our homes or in our offices. That wavelength of light. Once light is perceived when our eyes are open, the frequency of light is picked up by the optic nerve, and it sends a signal right to a nucleus in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. That nucleus signals the sympathetic nervous system, which signals the pineal gland, and the pineal gland gets busy making a neurotransmitter called serotonin. And serotonin is the daytime neurotransmitter that, once activated, begins to cause us to become aware that we're local in space and time, and we become conscious that we're our bodies in an environment and in time. And it produces a certain brainwave frequency called beta brainwave frequencies. It is beta brainwaves that causes us to put most of our attention on the outer world. And so the inhibition of light signals the same nucleus in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which then dampens down the sympathetic nervous system. And now the pineal gland begins to make a chemical called melatonin. And melatonin is the nighttime neurotransmitter. And as melatonin levels begin to rise because of darkness in the evening, then all of a sudden we begin to slow our brainwaves down into alpha and theta and ultimately delta. And it's melatonin then that allows our body to restore and regenerate.
Melatonin already causes you to dream, but you're going to lucid dream. You're going to get switched on, and you're going to have a full-on sensory experience between your ears. It's going to feel like more real than anything you experienced in your life. And that brain goes into a gamma brainwave state in super coherent, highly organized gamma brainwave patterns, and the autonomic nervous system now is on fire. And it's processing, and the autonomic nervous system is controlling, coordinating all those systems. It's keeping the blood flow going and vasodilation and gene expression and hormones and enzymes and digestion and all those things happening in the automatic system. Now it's processing a more coherent, rhythmic, very fast frequency that's sending a very coherent message to all the cells and tissues and organs of the body. And the person's feeling something that's physical, and yet it's not. It's not an emotion, it's electromagnetism and energy.
Melatonin levels are at their highest during a 24-hour cycle between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. And that's important for you to know.
The yogi hours.
When we do the meditation to activate this ancient gland in the back of the brain,
It's always important to know that it's a good idea to wake up early enough when the raw materials are at their height. When energy begins to interact with those latent systems, and the pineal gland has those little tiny calcite crystals, and they're rhombohedron in shape, and they're stacked up on top of each other. And they're in our pineal glands. Everybody has them in there. And when we do that breath, and we hold our breath, and we begin to contract, pump, and pull those intrinsic muscles in, it's the activation of those crystals, because the mechanical stress that we're putting against it as we hold our breath and pump begins to produce what's called a piezoelectric effect. Now mechanical stress is turning into an electrical charge. Now it's electrically activated, so energy is going to move that direction. So then, if you do this properly and you begin to electrically activate those crystals, they begin to shimmer like a radio receiver. And if you can suppress the neocortex by dialing down the brain waves into a low level of alpha and even theta, and the person knows how to be conscious in their subconscious mind. And now the antenna's on, now you gotta learn how to use it. You gotta learn how to tune into frequencies and energies.
It inhibited atherosclerosis, or hardening of the arteries. It heightens both cellular and metabolic immune responses. It decreased certain tumor developments in laboratory animals. In certain animals, it increased the lifespan by 25%. It has a very important neuroprotective role in the brain. It increases REM sleep. It is an important free radical scavenger and antioxidant. Now, antioxidant means anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-heart disease, anti-stroke, anti-neurodegenerative, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial. Take one slow, steady breath. And as you slowly follow your breath and you contract those intrinsic muscles, as you follow your breath and you bring that breath all the way up to that pineal gland, and you hold your breath and you keep your attention on that pineal gland, that's your target. The act of contracting those muscles, along with the holding of your breath, would begin to push cerebral spinal fluid right up into your brain. And as you begin to hold your breath, you're pushing that cerebral spinal fluid right up against the crystals of the pineal gland and applying a mechanical stress. And then the mechanical stress begins to electrically activate those crystals. And when those crystals become electrically activated, we are turning on the radio receiver in the brain. And you switch on the brain's radio receiver, and now the brain can tune in the frequencies beyond the senses. And that is the mystical gland. And the research says it's a transducer, taking energy and information in one form and turning it into pictures and images, meaning. And that's why it's called the third eye, because you have an inner vision that's more real than the outer world. The brain now, it's picking up information from the field, and it's transducing it into profound imagery, a mystical transcendental moment. And we do the breath. When you finish that breath, I'm going to ask you to finish it right on that pineal gland. That's your target. And once that sympathetic nervous system switches on, there's an arousal. And that energy is not going to be moving out. The sympathetic nervous system is going to merge with the parasympathetic nervous system, and that energy is going to be released up into the brain. Are you with me still? And there's a gate at the brain stem called the thalamic gate. And that gate opens wide up. And that energy moves right up to the brain. Now, once the energy makes it to the top of the head, all that energy that was stored in the body, the 95%, is now moving up towards the brain. And as the energy moves up towards the brain, you get a positive charge here and a negative charge here. And you have a positive charge here and a negative charge here. What do you have? A magnet. And all of a sudden, you start producing this external electromagnetic field. And that energy goes right up to the pineal gland, and it signals that pineal gland, and the brain goes into gamma brainwave patterns, and the person is feeling an awakening.
Ain't that basically like what I was trying to say, but like way better?
Basically, essentially, yeah.
That's funny. But yeah, 100%. So look, it has that ability, and then look at the melatonin and our experiences that we have when we dream, and how you can get into those super sensory experiences where you're not using your eyes. This is all internal vision that is being used, and in those times when that's happening, our body is secreting melatonin within that, coming from that region. Now, when I'm probably not going to play this other video right now because it's kind of long. I'm probably just going to kind of clip it in here.
Mm-hmm.
um but it's basically the video talking about the sacred oil, how it's the anointed Christ, every 29 and a half days, when the sun comes into the sign of your moon sign, that this sacred oil, this substance, is secreted by the pineal gland, and it descends down your cerebral spinal column, which is the life of Jesus, because you have 33 vertebrae down your spinal column, which represents the 33 years of Jesus. Like, everybody knows. I feel like now, especially with the popularity of astrology, everybody knows that Jesus correlates with the sun, especially with the 12 disciples. And then you can look at all of these different deities within ancient Greek, within all of these things, where you see the correlation between the 12, and how they're attributing to the zodiac sign too. So it's not just Jesus that's that, but we don't understand that these things are happening within inside of us, that there is a sun within inside of you, that there's a Christ within inside of you. And this is exactly what Jesus said, that the Christ is inside of you. But then the church tried to take that teaching and twist it and make you think that it's some real nigga, and then you have to do some phallic type mentality. Okay, Jesus is a real person and he's inside of me. Wait, hold up, pause. Wait, hold up, pause. And then now y'all discombobulated because now Jesus has to be inside of you now. And now you're not a straight man anymore. When it was
Mm-hmm.
never when it was never talking about that, where he's
Mm-hmm.
talking about the aspect is within inside of you.
Even if you, when you find out the story about like your blood too, since Jesus is supposed to represent the sun, and the sun is correlated with your blood, your circulatory system, you understand why we speak about all these hormones and these internal movements, because your blood plays a major part in transferring all those things. And I bet for you to be able to reach these state of minds, you need a healthy, a healthy blood, and without pathogens, toxins, and things like that, because your blood is what makes up all your organs. And if you think about your other organs as your, like, your 12 disciples, now you see why your 12 disciple needed Jesus, your blood, to travel and bring the message, and why he might be the most important prophet there is, because your blood technically is the most important thing. Even the story of his death is a description of how your bone gets created. 'Cause Jesus dies on the cross around Capricorn time, and Capricorn is like the skeleton system. So when Jesus dies, the blood cell becoming like a hard structure, some form of cartilage, ligament, and things like that. So when they say Jesus died, they speak about you died for yourself to come into existence.
100%. And then with the bone, with the correlation with Saturn, with your bone structure, and then we venerate Jesus on Capricorn season, which is ruled by Saturn, and Capricorn rules the bone system um, within the body. We're starting to see the connection between the celestial events and our bodies, and the systems that we are already following under already recognize those connections, but just kind of disguise them and hide them from us through this lore. And they have to, because these things are exist subconsciously within inside of us. The 10 commandments are written on your heart. You don't need God didn't need to come down to tell you not to thief. He didn't need to not to kill another nigga, to not go and fuck another nigga's wife. To like, these things are written in our hearts. And you learn. He doesn't need to tell you to not go and eat that thing there because it's gonna make your belly hurt. Because you're gonna go and eat the thing there and it's gonna make your belly hurt. And then now you know not to go in. So
Mm. That's how even we came up with laws and things like that by experimenting, basically.
100%, 100%. And then now we can even look at what the Antichrist is. The Antichrist, because the Antichrist is what's going to be against Christ, right? But if Christ isn't an actual person, then the Antichrist isn't going to be a person or a mimic of that. If Christ
Is
is
the
referring to this
mm,
secretion within our body that gives us this super sensory experiences,
mm,
that puts us into alpha brainwave states where we are more peaceful, where we are more forgiving, where we're not in those focusing on the external world. Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. And if you follow this Christ, this oil, like what he said with melatonin, it gives you internal vision. It puts you internal. Alpha brainwave, you're focusing on your internal world. And where's the kingdom of God? It's within you. So why would you look for it outside of you? So now you're starting to understand the teachings and where and why this shit is actually kind of fire, where they're talking about some real stuff. And then every 29 and a half days, when this alignment happens with the sun in your moon, and we're starting to understand the pineal gland responds to electromagnetism. Joe Dispenza was just talking about how he's trying to create a piezoelectric effect with a breathing technique where he's literally trying to move the spinal fluid up the spine, which is the same spinal fluid that contains this crystals, this anointed oil that has descended within those dates, within that alignment, and starts to rise up within that alignment. And then we're talking about Jesus um in being born in the manger, wasn't and being born in Bethlehem, and then
mhm,
Bethlehem literally translates into the house of bread. The house of bread. Where's the house of bread? That's your fucking tummy, my nigga. That is your tummy. That is the house of bread, and it's
mm,
representative of Virgo as well. And this is
mm,
where the sacred oil goes to charge. That's why it's called your solar plexus. It goes to charge here, and this is where you get to the concept of the Antichrist, because it's very fragile. And if you were to squander or mess up this oil during this time, um it won't rise up and cause those activations within the body. Joe Dispenza is talking about a way of facilitating this change, kind of more so automatically, but then the conditions that allow for these type of sensory conditions to happen do happen 20 every 29 and a half days when the sun is within your moon sign. So we know that we are affected through it, and then that the different positions of the planets are changing the magnetic field of Earth. So is that alignment creating a reaction with your electromagnetic field within your body for that activation of the pineal gland? And most certainly it is. We know the sun controls biological functions, that the sun folds proteins in the blood and helps blood move throughout the body. That when you go to a hotter place, your blood is moving faster and thinner. And when you're going into a colder place, it's harder to have that type of blood flow. So like we can see these things, and they do represent these higher functions, because the we have to be designed by some type of intelligence to have this type of cohesiveness, some type of awareness that is intelligent for us to be linked like that and designed so intelligently.
mm, and that's how you become like a true Christian, like a follower of Jesus.
Exactly. Look at the churches, how they have a
Mm,
ritual where they put oil on their forehead. And it's supposed to be some blessed oil, but these niggas don't understand that that's the Christ. That Christ, literally in Latin, the Christos literally means anointed, but it's talking about a sacred oil, like an ointment, or that's probably not where it's going. But anointed is what it means. But it's talking about this sacred oil that is secreted within the brain. And then this is just a dude who, I don't really need to play it, but within this video he says that melatonin, the chemical composition of melatonin, the molecular composition of it, if you take CO2 out of melatonin, it turns into DMT. Isn't that interesting? And Joe Dispenza talks about that too, how DMT is a metabolite of melatonin, and where it has to go through certain reactions. And Joe Dispenza is teaching you a breathing technique to make changes to melatonin within your body. And he's telling you to do it at the times where melatonin is at its highest, and he's telling you to do it so that you can have a mystical experience. But it's literally turning this melatonin into DMT within inside of you. So when we're looking at spirituality and mystical experiences and stuff like that, these are real realities within our body. And then you release DMT when you die. And then we talk about seeing a white light and returning to source type of energy and feeling on oneness with people in NDEs. They go and meet God, and then they feel uh complete love surrounding them once they do die. Everybody who has a DMT talks about that. Some have some intermediary phase where, maybe based off of their own mentalities, they didn't resolve certain things within their life. So some people kind of do have some scary experiences, but the vast majority of them, and even those ones, eventually, once those things are confronted, feel that feeling of love and acceptance, and they feel like they came home to something. So we are definitely connected, and these spiritual experiences are happening within our body. They are not separate. And then if we start to understand this spiritual body connection, we won't separate them. We'll start to see the divinity within our physical bodies and lives, and then we can start to enter those coherent brainwave states. Remember, the alpha brainwave is resonating with nature's, with Earth's, with the Sherman resonance, not something else. And that's what provides those healing mentalities. And then what is melatonin? It's anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, anti all of these type of things. Very beneficial for our health, let alone just our spiritual life. But yeah, and it controls our circadian rhythm too. Oh shit. Look how it connect the pineal gland and melatonin and serotonin control our circadian rhythm. Isn't that the sun rising and setting too? Another connection to Jesus, the sun rising and setting, and then it responds to the light response, aka the sun traveling through the day. But then, so the milky substance that we were talking about, that is connected with the Bible, that we're talking about the milk in the milk and honey, is oxytocin. And what is oxytocin? Oxytocin is deeply involved in labor and delivery too, but it's a hormone that they dub to be the love hormone or the bonding hormone, relationship hormone, because it puts us into that satisfactory state of being. In fact, there is a link between um oxytocin and oxycontin, fucking opioids. It's the same receptors that they are binding to. So we can take a look at that later. But what I wanted to show is, yeah, what's the function of oxytocin? Not only does it deal with birth, when we're talking about, baby Jesus and ascension, but we're talking about it dealing with the seed as well. So now you can see the connection between why we would call it a seed, and how it carries the same vibration of being connected to childbirth, whether it's this liquid, this lymph, this concentration of water within us races up to the brain, or we call it cerebral spinal fluid, or we call it the chrism, or you can let it out through cum and sperm and semen, and then look at how it still has the power to create life. that sperm can become semen. That is the sacred seed. That is the sacred seed. It could be squandered and the and excreted through the body through lust and stuff like that, or it can be raised up within the brain and become things like oxytocin, which is associated with sexual arousal, recognition, trust, romantic attachment, and yeah, they're researching oxytocin in connections with addiction. So there was another one that I wanted to show: oxytocin and opioid addiction revisited, old drugs, new application. And where was it? Was it this one? Uh, it's basically just talking about the connection between opioid addiction and how they can treat it with oxytocin, which is a natural thing that our body produces, so they can help wean people off of that the drug substance. Just to show you the connection between oxytocin and heroin, to show you that heroin, people who take heroin and opioids are one of the hardest drugs to kick, man, because it gives you such a feeling of contentment, such an overarching feeling of love and acceptance. And doesn't that isn't that what happens when you're in a loving relationship, and when you're bonding and having sex with someone, or when you are a new mother, you just give birth to a baby and you guys are bonding for the first time, this all encompassing feeling of love. And then it's oxytocin being released by your pituitary gland, which is your crown chakra, which is the top of your head. Joe Dispenza says when the energy goes there, you enter gamma brainwave states, and there's this activation there, and you start releasing these hormones like oxytocin. So what did Christ talk about with Christ consciousness? He entered Christ consciousness, and all he could talk about was love, forgiveness. Buddha entered nirvana, and he was in a state of bliss. Quetzalcoatl transformed into the feathered serpent and became a celestial being that superseded human thought and perception. So everybody ascended into this all-encompassing type of state of being, but they didn't need anything. They didn't need anything because they felt like they had everything already. And that's because oxytocin was being responded within the brain. And then what you see when you talk about to heroin addicts and opioids, they don't need anything. They don't need nothing but heroin. They don't need nothing, because it makes them feel so content. So that feeling to that intensity can happen to us naturally, and we can control that if we tap into our sympathetic nervous system. But yeah, going on the Antichrist, and I wonder what you would think about this idea. But look at the diet of the Essenes. The Essenes were the people that had that preached these beliefs, or had the understanding of the Christ, and teach it like this, and then it was later changed by the Romans. But look at their diet. They were an ancient Jewish sect living in Judea. Blah, blah, blah. They ate a simple diet of fresh fruit, vegetables, barley, wheat, almonds, milk, and honey. So why am I saying that they had this diet? Because this is all alkaline. This is all alkaline type of things that don't create excessive amounts of acid within the stomach. In that video, they talk about how no drunkard can enter the kingdom of heaven, because that sacred oil, when it's in your solar plexus, is very fragile. So if fermentation is happening within the gut, it would change. Just even think about it logically, like pH. When we're talking about pH, acidity, and alkalinity, we're talking about potential hydrogen. This, we're talking about a charge. We're talking about a charge. So changes and fluctuations within a charge is not going to change, especially neurotransmitters, which travel through the body through electromagnetism. Of course it is. So whether there's fermentation going on in our gut or not, or whether our body is acidic, overly acidic, or alkaline, or overly alkaline, even, because that's a negative too, where you want to be more in a balanced state, that that sacred oil will get squandered. And I think that this is what we're talking about with the Antichrist. So the Antichrist is going to be what? Promoting what then? If things that cause fermentation within the gut, which is overeating, killing out these niggas didn't eat animals because protein is what? It's made out of what? Amino acids. And it's just going to fill the body with acids, even though they're good to a certain degree with a certain amount. But with too much, you're going to have too much acids going on within the body. And then your body is going to react negatively. And cells can't intake oxygen. Cells can't communicate with each other when they are overly acid, and then what's going to trigger your calcium response within your body, because calcium comes and buffers and neutralizes acids, and this is what causes a lot of the buildup and calcification that goes on within the body. Don't we talk about calcified pineal glands? So how did your pineal gland get calcified if there wasn't excess acids within that region? And how do you get rid of those acids? You turn your body alkaline. So the people who preached this ate this diet, which is pretty interesting, and at least at specific times. So when this energy is as potent within your solar plexus, fucking stay away from that shit. Stay away from all of the acidity that could be built up within the gut. And then even look at this. Look at this article that I found that's talking about specific acid and other acids on cerebral spinal fluid production. And look at down here. It's talking about basically breaking down, saying that when they were introducing acids to cerebral spinal fluid and changed the pH, they added hydrochloric, phosphoric, acidic acids of the same pH. It reduced central your nervous system or your central spinal fluid production by approximately 33%. And then when it's talking about the formation of catalyzed carbonic hydrogenase specific acids and stuff like that, it reduced the cerebral spinal fluid by 42%. So and then look at with different acids, they're talking about a reduction of 64%. So when the Essenes are saying that um, acidity or fermentation going on in the gut is going to ruin the seed, we're looking at a study here. I got this off of NIH, the National Library of Medicine, showing the effects that acids have on cerebral spinal fluid. So if you're eating a diet that is run with these acids, especially at these times, what is it going to be doing to your cerebral spinal fluid? It's literally showing a decrease in production. So is that's why the Essenes eat these way? Is that why Buddhists are vegetarians? Why every spiritual tradition had a specific diet that had came with them? What I had another thing, but no, that's basically it. That's basically it. So that's the Christ that I want people to really know, the Christ that is with inside of them. That is the real Christ, and that's actually what was being referred to the Bible before all of those other deviations. But yeah, yo, what do you think about that?
I agree with everything you said. There's else to say to basically.
When I seen that the Essenes had, when it was talking about the fermentation in the gut, and then now look at what society is purporting right now. Don't we and why we are in the circumstances that we are in, and look at them talking about the return of Christ coming back. Isn't that interesting? And then not even just Christ coming back, but resurrection. We know people that have terminal illnesses that are supposed to die, that change their diet, alkalize their body, change their diet and their lifestyle, got rid of the toxicness, the over aggressiveness, the representing the acids, the over masculine type of nature, and started to neutralize and balance their body. The disease went away. Is that the death and resurrection? Just like what Harith was saying, how you can sacrifice a blood cell, but then you can also start to rebuild them up. Where it's reincarnation, dying and reincarnation, going on within the body. But yeah, how if we have too much of these acids within our body, we won't be able to understand that. And then not only does it come from diet, but what gets released within the body, cortisol is going to create an acidic environment, the stress hormones. So if you're in beta frequency, when you're constantly obsessing about the external world, you're going to be releasing cortisol for your body to produce enough energy for you to deal with this external threat, whether there's one or not. You can just be thinking that there's one or and imagining one that's one and triggering that response within your body. You remember how I was saying that the flexing arm experiment and how they increase their muscle strength by visualizing it? You can do the same negatively, which is what we do all the time, where we do these negative imageries of things like that. And we stay in these toxic mindsets and then we manifest them. We put our body in that state of being and make it biologically so. Biologically so, we make those things reality. So we have to be so careful of that. And that's why I wanted to talk about that crystal, so you to understand how when we're talking about worshiping the temple and shit like that, we're talking about you and your body being the temple. Like, this ain't no joke. It ain't no joke. In the rewards in the temple, this is Santa Claus. The presents that Santa Claus brings, the Santa Claus, the colostrum, the fluid that's being dripped from the colostrum is dripping down the chimney in order to leave the presence, which is these types of spiritual insights, which can happen at that time. So look at this thing that we're talking about, where the sun goes in the spot where the moon is. Do you think the winter solstice and the time Jesus, where we venerate Jesus, is a replication of this process that goes inside of us? Because Jesus dies and is resurrected on the third day, just like how we have 3 days, kind of 2.5 days to for that Christos to not waste it or squander it, for it to rise up. And then there's that connection with that time, and then the sun goes down for 3 days and Jesus is the sun. So this is a powerful time. Does that mean that we have more access to information during the winter solstice? That we have more ability to tap into to energy to experience these spiritual realities at this time? I
Mm.
100%. Everybody worship the winter
Longer,
solstice.
because you're experiencing more in period of night, so you're obviously gonna experience more melatonin, I would assume.
Exactly. See, this is what I'm trying to say, where we can get spiritual, but it's not separate from the body. It's not separate from the body, and your body's not separate from spirituality. It's all echoed within the same. So niggas will be talking about, oh, my arm this, my body that, and niggas just talking about, oh, the stars this and the stars that. Nigga, we talking about the same, talking about the same thing. But you know, we get lost within making that connection. But yeah. That's all. That's all. But yeah, you have any other
Yeah.
comments or examples or allegories?
Uh. No.
Not really, eh? But yeah, we'll look at Christmas time and what we do at Christmas time, so you can say that this stuff ain't real, that I've never had no spiritual awakening. But look at the energy that exists. You can't deny that that time of year has an intense amount of energy. And then yeah, we spend it on Christmas, but why do they do it on Christmas? That's what I'm trying to show y'all. Like, we could have had access to the energy that we put towards Christmas and directed it towards anything else and had manifested anything else. Did you know that a lot of companies make 50% of their annual revenue during Christmas season? 50%. These companies, Best Buy, Walmart, all of these, if you think about it, when are you going to buy a PlayStation? Are you going to buy a
And
PlayStation?
Christmas.
Exactly. You're not buying a
Yeah.
PlayStation every time of the year, different things like that. You're probably gonna say same thing with a new laptop. When's maybe you'll buy it a little bit earlier or whatever, but mostly gonna be for Christmas. The new phone. It's probably mostly if you get what I mean. So it makes sense.
Mm,
So there's a lot of energy that goes in there.
because they're forcing you to play the allegory if like Capricorn is like their business, and then you're the sun, you're walking, and they sacrifice yourself by buying stuff from them. I suppose.
Exactly. Redirecting it, keeping you in beta brainwaves so you can't even access the downloads if there was any. But we're still influenced by this massive amount of energy and it has to move somewhere. But because they can control how we think or have that access to our subconscious mind and then use the symbolism. This is why they have Christmas. This is why there's festivals. This is why and then they're talking about sacred traditions. They're talking about Santa Claus coming down. They're talking about Jesus dying and being resurrected to the same thing. They're using all of the symbolisms and references so that they can access the truth of what they're saying to our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind will understand because it thinks in images and symbology, but our left brain, our logic mind, where we're resting our consciousness on, doesn't understand. And it's thinking outwardly. So then they can program us subconsciously, then make us act outwardly within that time. Imagine what type of energy we'd be able to do if we directed to anything else other than Christmas. And then look at how they pervert it. Look at how it was perverted. Like with Saturnalia. Now these niggas is fucking and shit like that. And like, don't even get me started on Christmas and the debauchery in Christmas, the devil worshiping Satanism and stuff like that. They definitely drinking and wasting wasting the seed there. They wasting the seed there 100%. And that all started with Rome. But anyways, yeah, that's the presentation, y'all. Check out the website TruSpace.biz and check out the Instagram TruSpace_, and yeah, we'll catch you guys later.